I've asked this of a couple of different preachers, a couple of different leaders in the church, and they're never able to give me a straight answer. If God is omniscient and omnipotent, He created everything. Why would He create this reality knowing that 99% of humans that He created would end up burning in hell? Why would He design it this way?
I wouldn't agree that it's 99% and 1% that are going, but it does say that the path to hell is broad and many people travel down it, and then there's a narrow path that leads to heaven. But God gave people free will. He gave them their own choice. He had a plan for them, even when He created them. But
but if God is eternally all-knowing, then when He was in the eternal past, before He created anything, He knew exactly who was going to hell and exactly who was going to heaven. And essentially Him then creating is causing those outcomes. So essentially we have a God who's causing people to go to hell because He chose to create based on His eternal knowledge. All this without any direct evidence that eternal knowledge is even a real thing. And in fact, I would argue that you can't have knowledge of infinity because infinity keeps going, and so you're always gaining more knowledge. The only way to have knowledge of everything is if there is no infinity, or if there's no unending existence. So there's just a contradiction there.
man can choose to go their own way. God doesn't force Himself. If God removed free
So when he says God doesn't force Himself, that's not true, because God does force. I mean, if we're saying that, yes, this Christian God is real, He eternally existed, He eternally knew what people would do, therefore He created, which means He forced it to happen. So, I mean, that if you follow logic and sound reasoning, that's the conclusion. Otherwise, you have to kind of wiggle your way out of that and say, nope, that's not actually how it happened, and come up with some other explanation.
will, then there wouldn't be love. So it's not so much that God made it that way, it's that many people choose to go their own way.
But God did make it that way, as I said. So maybe instead, I mean, the only way to get around this is to say, if there is a creator God, that He actually wasn't all-knowing, He didn't know the outcome from beginning to end, He just started creating, and then maybe realized some mistakes He made based on His not being all-knowing, and then maybe accidentally created the possibility for hell, and that could be the case. I don't really know. I mean, I don't have enough evidence to say, yeah, I believe that. But still, if that is the case, I mean, if you made a mistake, I mean, you could potentially correct it. And so we don't have to end up with this idea of an eternal hell, separation from God, never-ending suffering, because it could be fixable. I mean, unless you've created something that's so deliberately disobedient that it wants to go to an eternal place of suffering, no matter what you do, you're not going to stop it from wanting to do that, then yeah, potentially you could have an eternal state of suffering because the being who wants to go there it just wants to. You're not going to try to force them not to. And so they go there on their own volition. And I think it's crazy to think, but maybe they like it for some reason. They like being eternally suffering. It becomes absurd to think that's possible, and let alone there's not enough evidence to think that it's possible. It's just kind of these ideas that we're somehow able to come up with. But at the same token, I think we can have ideas that are actually helpful and hopeful and loving and don't have to involve some kind of eternal state of suffering